Good morning, and depending on where you are, thank you for taking time to join this broadcast today. Today, I'm talking about a thriving faith. You see, personally, I strongly believe that we are called to thrive, that a transformative faith is a faith that thrives. I strongly believe that God has called us to flourish wherever we are planted. In God's wisdom and in God's own ways, He has designed for us to be where we are, and He has the power and the ability to help us to thrive right where we are. So wherever you're planted, and you're a person of faith, I strongly believe this message is for you, that God has called you to flourish and to thrive in the very place that you are. That in His wisdom, He has placed so much on the inside of you that is able to make you flourish in the very place that He has planted you. While I was thinking about a thriving faith, one that is very transformative and changes where the person is, that kind of faith has to take an example from like the life of Christ. And while I was thinking of what's most appropriate to talk about, a text that came to my mind is in the book of Luke chapter 2, verses 52. I love that text because it has spoken to me so many times. And this is what the Bible says. It says, "And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man." Jesus grew in wisdom and stature, with favor with God and man. Like for me, this is the goal of my own faith, right? That a thriving faith is a balanced faith. Is the kind of faith where every area of life that you're growing and you're trying to fill in every space that God has called you to fill in. You see, one of the things I realize is sometimes you have Christians that we're just not balanced. All we're talking about when for instance, you find yourself in a social gathering, you just feel out of place, for instance, because all you're thinking of is the church life. You're so used to being in church that anything outside church just makes you really uncomfortable. By the way, if you constantly feel that way, it means you need to work on something, because your faith is not about thriving in the church, right? You need to make a difference in the world. I remember many years ago, I heard someone who said this. He said, the church does not need the church in the church. We need the church out in the world to make a difference and to transform the world to become the kingdom of God, right? So we have this struggle on the inside. But the text we read said something very key and very important, that Jesus Christ grew how? In wisdom. For me, this is when I think that, man, we need to grow our minds, that we need to read books and we need to challenge our minds, listen to people that are wiser than us, people that have written. So there's no time, there's no calling for laziness, that you need to thrive, to improve yourself where you are, right? To develop yourself. Wisdom is the practical application of the knowledge that you have. So you need to have the knowledge to be able to apply it. So the first thing is Jesus grew in wisdom. That's why at a very early age in his life, he went to the temple and he was able to challenge the scholars. It's not because Jesus was God while he was here on earth. No, remember, he was also fully human. So this notion that Christians are lazy and don't want to read, I think it's not in line with the glory and honor of God and who we are called to be. So Jesus grew in wisdom. So we need to have enough knowledge that we can apply to certain situations, and that is what is called wisdom, to live practically and wisely in the context. But you have to grow in what you know and develop your mind first. The second thing he says, and Jesus grew in stature. We can talk about the height, and he was growing to become a man. But also part of what I think about anytime I see this text is the idea of, taking care of your body. exercising, trying to eat right, right? Try to develop your muscles and being strong and ready for the task that God has called you and I. Um, this is something I wish I understood earlier, but right now I try to hit the gym and all that because I believe if I don't take care of my body right now, it may look like I'm young and I'm able to manage it. But the older you get, the more struggle, the more health challenges you're going to have because your stature is not growing right. You get what I mean? Jesus is able to carry the cross because there's a certain kind of strength. Even in the place of prayer and meditation and study, what you eat really affects you. For instance, you drank a lot of pap with a lot of sugar and a lot of milk. When you go to pray, you can't really pray very well. Most likely your mind will become sleepy. Sometimes we come to church, for instance, we talk about demons of sleep. Sometimes it's just what you ate that is affecting you in church and causing you to sleep. Right? So this stature, this body, the Bible tells us that our body are the temple of the living God, that we need to nurture, take care of this body that God has given us. And then he says, and he grew in wisdom, in stature, in favor with God. You see, so the relationship of Jesus and his Father was on point. Early in the morning, Mark would tell us, he went to a solitary place to pray. And we see that over and over. In the evening, he left his disciples. He took time to pray. And we see that Jesus's life was exemplified by this relationship with the Father, that is constant, that is life-giving. So you see this, we grow in wisdom, in stature, but our relationship, not at the expense of our relationship with God. So we need to walk on the relationship we have with our Father, understanding that all we can ever be flows from him, right? That we have this stature, we have this wisdom, but without God, there is no way we can rightly apply his word for our lives and for the world and for other people. So it's important that our relationship with the Father is on point also. So Jesus grew in wisdom, in stature, with favor with God, but also with man. So anytime I think of this, I think of, our social skills. Sometimes Christians, to be honest, we're not really good with our social skills. But the way we can make a difference in the world and our faith to thrive, we need to know how to relate with people. We need to talk to people. We need to understand the social skills necessary when it comes to relating with people. Jesus knew how to do that. He knew how to communicate with the rich, the middle class, and even the poor. That's as good as you can get when it comes to social skills. So Jesus, Jesus was wise on earth. He grew in his wisdom, put in the work to learn. In his stature, he was growing. And I think of us taking care of our bodies, but in good standing with the Father, spending time in relationship with God, and also with people, loving. This is where the idea of loving our neighbor as our own self and thriving in our own social skills and developing what it takes. Now, for me, these 4 components are the basic elements of when it comes to a thriving faith. That in areas where you find that you're lacking, right, or you need to push more and develop more, you can tap from these areas. For instance, some of us, we have an excellent relationship with God, but we're struggling with our social skills with other people. You see, your faith does not negate understanding and growing in your social relationships with people and learning how to even relate with people better. In fact, your faith calls you to do that, to seek to try to develop that area. That's you're thriving in your faith. The other thing is sometimes Christians, we feel like, we don't need to learn to grow. I strongly believe that if we're going to impact the world for God, then we need to take care of, take over some certain spheres in life, like in business, in entertainment, in music, and other areas. We need to learn new skills. We need to develop our minds. We need to read the word, learn the wisdom of the word, and not just being legalistic, right? But you're understanding that, our faith is very dynamic. The faith, the way you were living your faith out, let's say 3 years ago, you were chewing on milk, you were drinking milk, that God is calling you to eat bone right now. You get that. That's just a metaphor to tell us that our faith is progressive, that our faith grows, that our relationship and understanding of who God is and what God is doing, it's actually growing. So if you're taking milk 10 years ago and you're still taking milk today, it's maybe God is calling you to increase, to thrive in your faith, to develop your faith and make a difference in the world today. So even as we talk about thriving faith, I hope this image, for me, it's been good for me to have a balanced understanding of who God is and my relationship with the world and my relationship with myself, that I would try to grow in wisdom by learning knowledge. I will try to grow in stature by taking care of my body, and developing the way God has called me to develop, and try to work on my relationship with the Father and also my relationship with people. This idea gives a balanced understanding and a faith that is thriving. Areas where we're lacking, there's always room for growth. There's always room for development. And I hope you and I can seek to thrive in our faith. Because when we're thriving in our faith, it becomes attractive to other people, that we're not Christians that are just put in a box. This is all we know. No, but you can't predict who we are, because we have a God whom you can't predict who he is and what God is doing in the world. And we're called to be a reflection of our God, right? But we need to seek to grow this mindset of growth and development and thriving in what God has called us to thrive in. It is very, very necessary to make a difference in the world. So I hope you can step in this week and in the days ahead to thrive in your faith. Like, you need to make it a goal to to thrive in whatever you're doing. Take the work you have and everything and say, God, what more are you calling me into? You get that the dream that God has for you and the purpose God has for you, it's greater than you can ever imagine. So maybe God is just calling you to move away from that comfortable place that you are. Challenging your faith to be in a place, but to do that, sometimes we want the approval of people, right? Sometimes you have to disappoint people to be in the place where God has appointed you. You have to do certain things that some people will say, no, this is not how you ought to act, because they seem to know about God. In fact, they claim to be God in your own life. But you need to know what God is calling you to do, right? And that the voice of God is the greatest voice in your own life, that you can step into what God is calling you with confidence. You see, you don't have to explain to everyone what God is asking you to do. You don't have to tell them this is this and this and this. In fact, you don't have to wait for their approval, because the whole approval you need is God's approval. Because the very thing that I believe some of you God is asking you to do is too radical for other people to understand. And if you cannot step in by faith into the realities that God is calling for you, you're going to remain stagnant. So maybe for your faith, where you are right now in your journey, that God is calling you to a higher plane, and it's very costly. But that's the very place you have to be for you to thrive. If not, you're going to remain where you are, and your faith is not really going to be bearing much fruit. Maybe where you are right now was very fruitful in the past. But God is saying, well, I'm done with that work in your life. I have greater work for you. I hope we can all step into that. And it can be a challenge, but take it one day at a time, that together we're thriving to make a difference for God. And it's not just about us. The Bible says we're like flowers. We're here today. We're not there tomorrow. So let's remember that we're called to make a difference, and the time to do it is now. Thank you for taking time to be part of this. Subscribe if you haven't to this page on Facebook and on YouTube, and great content, and all the wonderful people are bringing wonderful content right in this place. So let's thrive in our faith and make a difference. Let's go and do it for the glory of God. God bless you, and you have a wonderful day. Until I see you next time. Bye-bye.